Good evening. Good to talk to you. This is a sit and talk because it did rain and was cold, and because I was tied up by my cases these days, representing the abused and misunderstood. And I've never met a person in or out of the court that didn't feel that at some time or other that happened to them. More particularly, we can talk about Trump, who seems to have only one speed: pound sand to anybody, however minor the disagreement. In fact, the more retired and remote the individual is to fame and fortune, it's like the more Trump likes to dig in, because he's a bully. He likes to just smash people, and he's a trash talker. And unfortunately, the Democrats don't come back with it. I don't know why. I don't think you have to be born in New York. I've got to believe, New York, Chicago, New Orleans, San Francisco, Boston. They have to have people who trash talk, but do people lose their ability to do that when they go into government, when they go into elected office? Are they so careful that they no longer say anything relevant or worthy of listening to? Would we want to listen to them go on and on with the bromades that they used to do and they get away with because they'd mark time, and all the other stuff that didn't happen when they made stops to talk to people is how they got elected? But let's go back to Trump. Him specifically, not really a politician originally, but certainly a businessman who has no heart, who cares not about other people, who is not the benefactor to anyone else. You're not going to see him raising money and actually giving it to people, except for some tax advantage or other, as has been documented in his case. So what we have is trust. Even Trump, it's an interesting slip. The absence of trust with Trump, we have him headed towards, another cage fight, always another cage fight. And he's always going to win them. He's always going to fight at them because he will not accept the truth as it is. He has his own truth and he wants to implement it. And if there was anything that was right out of the 1984 real rule book, that's it. Now, in the Garcia case, this is a really good example. If you found out that you had made a mistake anywhere in the government, from the lowest rung up to the top of an agency, that a wrong person had been sent to an infamous jail in El Salvador, wouldn't you want to get that person out right away? Why would you hesitate? And then you'd go around and say, how did we get this wrong? And the truth of how they got this wrong is that they don't do any due process. They don't check anything. They just do it because this person looks Hispanic. This person always got an advantage. We can't let somebody have an advantage, although the entire lives of these people is about advantage. And then in the Supreme Court, we see a little language play, and I don't know if that was to help the administration by their own bootstraps to defeat bringing back Garcia, which is not understandable by any sympathetic or factual or legal basis. So in the Supreme Court, and we went over this language yesterday, the question that the Supreme Court seemed to use was facilitating Garcia instead of what was stated by the judge, which was to effectuate it. In other words, make it happen. And so now it's become something like, why don't we lay out the steps by which the Department of Justice is going to bring him home? But the Department of Justice, instead of a can-do attitude, and we're told that there have been other instances of this, and they have been corrected. So why can't they be corrected in the Garcia case? But the Department of Justice on 9 a.m. Friday was supposed to say how they were going to do it, and all they would say was that it was impracticable. That's all they had to say. So what we have is the gunfight at the not okay corral. And this is increasingly the story of dealing with anybody in the administration of this ne'er-do-well Trump. It's just not acceptable. And then they also try to make the legal argument that we don't have policy authority over there. Well, you could get one of the members of your cabinet to appear with the prisoners, but you can't get a prisoner who shouldn't be there out of there and return to the United States. Also, we're concerned about interfering in El Salvador's sovereignty. There's an interesting idea. Did we make a deal with them about what prisoners they would take, at what cost, and under what circumstances, and who was responsible, and what would we do if there was a challenge about it? You might think that a first-year law student would figure that out. Why don't these guys do it? Because it's inconvenient to them. They have an objective, and they work toward it. Now, when we listen to Trump's aide Miller, He says, judge can't exercise foreign affairs powers. These are not foreign affairs powers. But the Supreme Court itself unanimously said in a per curiam opinion that the judge, that our government can't act illegally when it's involved in foreign affairs powers. So that gives you a sense of it. But that's just one case. The Khalil case is the case of the student that was seized when his wife is near the term of her pregnancy. They came and they took him out. He has a permanent visa. He should be remaining here. But where did they take him? They took him to Louisiana. They took him to a selected immigration judge who would decide that he be deported, as happened yesterday, as I understand it. And they want to send him to Syria or Algeria. Now, that's not the end of the story, because lawyers in various other locations are moving to attack that decision and to prevent him from being deported, because once that happens, we're in no man's land. It's interesting that these are not isolated cases, because we're told there are 1,000 students and scholars who've had their visas revoked. That is to facilitate removing them from the country, and on bullshit reasons. Isn't that something? And here's another innovative one. We've heard the Trump administration talk about those who are in Social Security but who are dead. And as has been explained repeatedly by the Social Security Administration, there are people on the rolls who are dead, but they're not receiving anything. And so, yes, perhaps they should be cleaning out names that are not relevant to the system, but they haven't done that. But the flip side of it is these people haven't been paid for anything. So now, here's a twist on that. The government is moving 6,000 Latino immigrants into a database which tracks dead people. Now, why would they do that? This means those people can't get a job, perhaps, can't get anything that would be accessible to a person who had a Social Security number. They pay taxes and so forth. This is the kind of squeeze them. And if you think this is only happening to them and could never happen to us, think about all that we've known since 2015 about Trump. We know about Trump that he would do this and do everything else you could think of that is wrong. Another interesting thing is there was, and this fits a theme. This is about access to government, freedom of speech, freedom to practice your religion, freedom to be let alone. And there's a whole penumbra, that is a kind of shining, glowing aspect to these amendments that make it safe for you, free from the government, a way to assert a right that you could be let alone. And it's the First and the Fourth and the Fifth and the Sixth Amendments of the Constitution take us there. A Florida high school teacher, she made a mistake. She referred to a student by his name, the name he has assumed, and she lost her job because of it. This is this craziness, this intolerance, this bigotry, this hate, and it's just so extensive, and we see it everywhere. That a person should lose their job because she recognized a person by their alternative name. That's where we are. I guess that's where Florida is. And maybe Trump really needs a longer shower. Maybe that's why he passed that bill. But you would think a guy who's claims to be a billionaire or multimillionaire or whatever he is, but he has more change in his pocket than you or I. You think he could just get a little more water. But you see, everything is posturing for him. It's like, oh, he's suffering with us. How many of you have a 15-minute shower every day? Do you think he has a bath? Do you think he's manicured? Do you think he has somebody chase him around a room? This guy is a real bad guy. We had a Bureau of Land Management nominee who was withdrawn, and the question is why? And the thing is because she wrote criticism of Trump at one point. She was disgusted by the January 6th lies that were being told. See that? If you actually have gray matter here, you can't cut it with this administration. I don't know if you saw it the other day, but they had And I don't usually see the picture on the TV. I hear it, and maybe that's how you do it as well. And I can't stand hearing Trump, so I don't do a lot of that. But I did manage to see, standing in the room were a whole bunch of the aides of the president, oh, so eager to please him. Oh, yes, oh, you're so wonderful, and so on and so forth. What kind of person wants to be such a toady? It's just not understandable. When I was younger, there was I think it was a Daumier print in France, and it was two men bowing to each other, each trying to bow lower than the other. They're completely naked. I don't mean this in a sensual way. It was so that there was no indication of their station in life, if you will. And so they're both bowing to each other, flattering each other without knowing anything about the other person. These guys know who he is. They know he's evil and he's wrong. They don't even have that excuse for withholding, as they should, support for his craziest moments. If you saw the people go around the room in the last cabinet meeting, they say, oh, Mr. President, the world's so lucky to have you. Yeah, tell that to all the people whose businesses collapsed, whose 401ks have disappeared, people who lost their station in the stock market for no reason having to do any conduct by them or misengagement by them, only because of the chaos created by Trump and all of these things. Now, we've thought pretty clearly, I think, all along the way that the Department of Justice should be independent of the president. A guy like Nixon got in a lot of trouble about this stuff, and we supposedly passed laws to change it and everything. Now Trump, he directs the Department of Justice to probe those critical of him. You may remember a guy named Miles Taylor who wrote an op-ed, and he said he was part of the resistance, and he talked about what was really going on. And then I think he issued an anonymously authored book on the subject as well. Well, they want the Department of Justice to look at him. The irony would be to look at him for what he's released in terms of what they consider secret or confidential or classified data, when they're holding these little sessions with the chamber of men who are planning war, and they're recording it, and they feel safe about it because it will be obliterated as soon as the conversation is over. An evolutionary biologist was on a report, and there were going to be 3 people on the report, and 2 of the 3 decided to withdraw because they didn't want to be compromised by their actual opinions. One of the things that we learn in school and find one place or other is how Patrick Henry wanted us to declare our independence and to resist the King of England, taxation without representation. And it's interesting when you think of the young people that Trump is going after, that Patrick Henry was 29 when he was giving a speech that said, give me liberty or give me death. Who in America understands the significance of what's going on that can compromise your liberty in ways that you can't even imagine now, and in ways you should not feel comfortable because somebody else is suffering that you think would never lead a trail of crumbs to you, because you don't know what will become offensive. If I can't call somebody by an alternative name, if I can't say they lied about January 6th, if I can't say discrimination's intolerable, and I can't believe Trump would support that, where are we? Where are we? We're in a place where we don't want to be, and this will affect everything else that we do. And that's why we have to very carefully scan what's going on. I also wondered, when I saw these different stories the last day and a half or so, if the press was digging deeper and finding these, or they're coming up more frequently. I assume it's a mix of the two, because to punch through a news cycle and take up space in a paper or time on the air or sound on other devices, you have to reach a certain level, and we may not enjoy the 24/7 news bracket that we have now. But the flip side of it is we seem to have a lot of news. 2 things are happening. We see abuses by our administration in a way I don't think we have in many years. I'd go back to Nixon for that, but there have been other instances, obviously. And what we also have is we have a situation in which many more pages are spent on international discussions. And this tariff war pushing China at the same time that we're pushing them closer to Russia, I'm sure, and we're dealing probably with Korea, creates an unsettling condition, not just for our economic life, but also for peace in the world. So those are a couple of thoughts I had. I apologize for repeating things you probably already well appreciate, but I thought it would be useful to go over this. The First Amendment is access to the government. It's freedom of religion. It's freedom from religion. It is a cherished value, and it is the First Amendment because Patrick Henry, a little older when the Constitution was written, was among those who insisted there had to be a Bill of Rights attached, which was not attached to the original Constitution, which was done behind closed doors, and the public didn't know what it was. And so the reaction, having the Constitution kept secret and then exposed, forced Patrick Henry and others to choose amendments to the Constitution. There was a discussion about this. The First Amendment is the amendment that protects us from a government such as Trump. We have to make sure and fight that we have that right, because that is what separates us between a monarch and a republic with a democratically elected leader. So that's what I have for now, and maybe tomorrow won't be raining. I'm told it's going to be warm, it's going to be dry, but I was told that about today too. So have a good evening, and I apologize if it takes longer to load this because the bandwidth has been terrible, and I have calls into people to say, rural is great, it would also be nice to have bandwidth. Talk to you, bye-bye.